Hello, and welcome to Phantastic Tales with me, Gav Cross. I love a supernatural story, and I read them live every Monday, 9 p.m, here on Substack. Or you might be catching this on YouTube, perhaps even the audio only, as a podcast. But it's much more fun if you come along live, Mondays, Substack, 9 p.m. Tonight I'm going to read Through the Door by Ruth Ainsworth. And it's from this book here, Haunting Ghost Stories. Authors include Roald Dahl, Philippa Pearce, H.G. Wells, Edgar Allan Poe, and Joan Aiken. And it's got colour illustrations. It's a hardback. It's an 80s book. And I think it's rather targeted at young readers, which fascinates me because there's some quite sweet ghost stories in here. And then there's some classic, bitey, nasty, spooky ones, like The Red Room and like The Monkey's Paw, as I've said before. But this story is called Through the Door. Maria was a fortunate little girl, and she knew this herself, though she was an only child, and therefore a prey to the loneliness and only child experiences. She lived next door to such a large, warm, friendly family that she felt as though she had 5 brothers and sisters instead of none. Her closest friend was Claire, a girl of her own age, but Claire's 4 older brothers were important too. Mrs. Cope, Claire's mother, often included Maria in family outings. She went with them to watch Jimmy in a swimming gala, and she joined in Paul's birthday treat, which was a visit to an ice rink. Both Claire and she sometimes accompanied Charles on his bird-watching expeditions. Charles took no notice of them, provided they lay perfectly still in the ditch, or reed bed, or wherever he had decreed they should freeze into immobility and silence. But they caught Charles's enthusiasm and felt it was all worthwhile to catch a glimpse of a green woodpecker or hear a grasshopper warbler. Lance, the eldest, was already a man in Maria's eyes. He went to college, but was as kind-hearted as the rest of the family, and he allowed Claire and Maria to sleep on the lawn in his new tent, after he'd tried it out himself. Then, out of the blue, came the terrible news that the Copes were leaving. Their house was up for sale, and all was confusion and desolation. When the last furniture van drove off, Maria burst into tears, which she had been restraining for weeks. She felt that she would never be happy again. Every day she and Claire had run in and out of each other's house freely. Now all this had come to a dead stop. Forever. But even weeping must stop at last, and Maria found she could go to bed without tears starting again. She tried having other friends to tea, but there seemed nothing to do to pass the time. Then her parents gave her a small black kitten, and Midge, as he was called, did more than anyone else to make her cheerful. He was a particularly cheerful kitten. It was many months, and not a few weeks as she had hoped, before the first longed-for visit to Claire could be arranged, as there had been so much to do to the new house. At last, she found herself in a train, leaving Liverpool Street for Ipswich, where some of the Cope family would meet her and drive her the rest of the way. As she settled herself in the corner of the carriage, she was very conscious that it was her first long train journey alone. And though she felt excited rather than apprehensive, she was not relaxed as she would have been on a familiar bus ride. She looked out of the window and tried to remember all she had heard about the new house from conversational letters. Claire was a writer of long, detailed, many-paged letters that became creased and crumpled with many rereadings. It had once been a small Elizabethan manor, which had been much restored and modernized over the years. "It's just a shell," Lance said, "with massive chimneys and a few original windows." "It's nothing if not old," said Mrs. Cope, "with uneven floors and draughts, but it seemed to suit us." We like the views and the garden, and it just holds us all when everyone's home. You're to share my bedroom, Claire has written, and it's the best room in the house, with a secret staircase. I won't tell you any more, as you'll soon see for yourself. But we can talk as long as we like in bed. No one knows what we're up to. It's a private room, and that's something I've never had before. My last bedroom had a fan light, and someone always noticed if I ever tried to read late. The moment she got out of the train at Ipswich, all sense of loss and absence melted away. The Coates were just exactly the same, even nicer, such of them that had come to meet her. Mrs. Coate greeted her as if she were a long-lost daughter, and Claire hugged and kissed her too. It was a real homecoming. Charles carried her suitcase upstairs and told her seriously that she might hear a bittern booming if she were lucky. Claire hurried ahead and opened the door. We can manage now, Charles. I want to show Maria the rest of the house myself. Look, Maria, these wooden stairs are just for me. They only lead to my bedroom. Well, to our bedroom, now you're here. They're rather steep and slippery, or so I thought when I first went up them, but they seem ordinary enough now. Take care. All this is my very own, said Claire triumphantly, as she flung open another narrow door at the top of the stairs. They went into a long, narrow attic room, with low beams across the sloped ceilings. It was the oddest room that Maria had ever seen. Once, it must have been dark and gloomy, a place of shadows and secrets. Now, it had 2 large windows at floor level and 2 beds with brightly coloured counterpanes and several pieces of furniture that Maria remembered from the old house. A white painted chest of drawers, several white chairs, a red toy box, and a new desk and chair. All this Maria saw in the first few seconds. Other details she noticed afterward. You've got a new desk. How lovely. Yes, Mummy wanted me to be really comfy and quiet up here. I could do my prep if I want, or write to you. She said the boys and their possessions spread all over the old house, and it was time I had a room of my own if I wanted to be out of everybody's way. And do you ever want to be up here alone? Sometimes I do, and then it's bliss. Jimmy plays the same record for hours and hours and nearly drives us all mad, and they all have their friends in more. That's because we live in the country. I often do things downstairs with everyone else. It's nice being able to choose. This is the oldest bit of the house, she went on. Also, Lance says he knows more about the place than anyone else. He says this is part of the original house. Come here, I'll show you. Claire opened a door at one end of the room, and Maria peered inside. It was a long, low, oddly shaped cupboard. It would have been pitch black without a small sloping skylight. It was now fitted out with hooks and a rail for coat hangers. Claire's clothes hung there, looking rather lost. There's lots of room for you and spare coat hangers. Use what you want when you unpack. Maria unpacked and put her clothes in the secret cupboard. Then the girls went down to tea. The stairs seemed steeper than ever now. Maria was going down them. She clung to the handrail every step of the way. After tea, Maria said she must write a birthday card for her mother, which she had brought with her. Write it at my desk, said Claire. You will find stamps and everything you want. All right, I will. Maria liked the idea of using the new desk. She found her way up to the landing and opened the door that led to the stairs. As she went into the room, she was surprised to find that she was not alone. She heard no definite sound, but she knew someone had followed her into the attic. She turned round quickly. Close behind her, only a foot or so away, was another girl. This other girl showed no surprise. She seemed so calm and composed, and it might have been her room. And Maria, the intruder, she was tall and pale, wearing a striped dress and carrying a pewter plate and mug. Who are you? Asked Maria. I'm Tabitha. She offered no apology or explanation for her presence. Maria felt more like a trespasser. What are you doing? She looked at the plate and the mug. Tabitha looked slightly surprised at this obvious question and raised her eyebrows, but she replied gently. Taking Father Simon his supper. Then, to Maria's horror and amazement, Tabitha and her plate walked right through the solid wooden door of the hanging cupboard. and disappeared. Maria fancied she heard the faint murmur of two voices, Tabitha's clear, childish one and a man's deeper tone. She did not wait to hear more, but fled to the comfort of the ground floor. She skimmed down the steep stairs as if in a dream, not feeling the wooden treads. Something in her face brought Claire quickly to her side. "Are you all right? What is it?" Can we talk somewhere?" whispered Maria. "How?" "I'll just show Maria the garden," said Claire loudly, and taking her friend's arm, she hurried her out of doors. Maria only waited for the door to close behind them to say urgently, "Claire, I saw something. I saw a ghost. In your room. I know I did. I'm certain." "Was it a fair-haired girl?" Maria's face fell, but she reacted instantly. "Oh, Claire, you knew all the time. Why ever didn't you tell me if you knew about her? How could you just leave me alone to discover her for myself? We used to share everything." Claire squeezed her arm and said warmly, "It wasn't really a bit like that. Of course I was going to tell you about the ghost. I was longing to. But we've hardly had a minute together since you arrived without other people milling around. It's rather sad, or so I think now. I once passed a girl with fair hair on the secret staircase. We neither of us said a word. I was far too frightened to speak first. I looked back and saw her reach the door into the attic and just pass through it like air and disappear." "Did you tell anyone?" "I told Mummy and she told Daddy. They were both very serious and disbelieving. They explained so patiently that I couldn't have seen anything because there wasn't anything there. When they heard I'd looked back and seen the girl on the stairs, they said that proved the whole thing was impossible, as it would have been too dark. They went on and on, showing me how impossible it was. Then they suggested I swapped rooms with one of the boys if I thought I might feel creepy up there alone." "What did you say?" asked Maria. "Of course I refused. I know Jimmy would change with me like a flash, but I wasn't going to give up my lovely bedroom for anything. I said perhaps I'd imagined it and just laid low. I rather think they may have forgotten about it by now." "But you haven't forgotten." "No. And I never will." The girls had a cheerful evening, playing a new card game with Jimmy and Paul, which involved a great deal of shouting and laughing and slapping down of cards. They went to bed quickly, and neither mentioned ghosts. Claire only said as she got into bed, "The bedside lamp is between us. You just press this to put it on, and the main switch is in that corner." "Thanks," said Maria, snuggling down. For 3 days nothing happened. It wasn't pleasant and ordinary and like old times. They bird-watched with Charles, cycled miles down quiet lanes with Maria on one of the boys' old bicycles, went shopping, had a winter picnic. Then, on the third night, Maria woke up and breathed deeply. She smelt a queer, unusual smell. In a second, she was wide awake. "Claire, wake up, do! I think the house is on fire!" She stretched out an arm and shook Claire, screaming in her ear. Claire woke. "What's wrong? Are you ill?" "No, smell hard. Is it smoke?" "Let's put the light on." They both groped for the button on the lamp, but though it was only a few inches away, neither could find it. Maria jumped out of bed and felt for the main switch, but her fingers scrabbled on a plain wall. That had vanished too. Choking with terror, she found her way to Claire's bed and clung to her. Then came the tinkle of a little bell. The air cleared, and they found the switch for the light. Everything was quiet and normal, except for a very faint odour, so faint that it seemed to come and go as they breathed. "Nothing's on fire," said Claire comfortingly. She opened the door at the top of the stairs, no smell coming up. "You poor thing. Did you dream we were being burned alive?" "There was something peculiar," insisted Maria. "It woke me. It nearly choked me. And then the little bell rang. It seemed to go. It reminds me of something." They soon fell asleep, and in the morning, when Mrs. Cope asked if they'd had a good night, they looked at each other before answering. Then Claire said, It would be good if Maria hadn't dreamed the house was on fire and shouted in my ear. We soon got off again. That night, it was Claire who woke, but not in terror. She touched Maria gently and whispered, "Open your eyes." Maria opened sleepy eyes and saw at once that the room was no longer dark. At the far end of the attic, furthest from their beds, was a faint glow. It was a soft, flickering light of several candles. A company of strangely dressed people were gathered in silence before a table spread with a white cloth, with a silver cross above it. Both girls knew it to be an altar. A dark-robed priest murmured some words in an unfamiliar tongue. There was a tinkle of a bell. The priest raised his arms. The same queer smell pervaded the room. "Incense," breathed Claire. Maria nodded. Then came a great thundering outside and a pounding on a wooden door. They were shouting and they heard the words, "We're betrayed! The Queen's men are at hand!" At once all was dark. The candles had been blown out instantly. They heard the confused sound of feet, of furniture being moved, of muffled orders. It was like a rapid scene shifting, well rehearsed. Both girls felt for the switch of the lamp and one of them found it. Light sprang up and they saw at a glance that the scene at the far end of the attic had changed. People, candles, altar, silver cross, all had vanished. The doll's house and the toy chest were back in their places with the rugs and the pictures. The knocking had stopped, and the voices were quiet, but the room still seemed to echo with a thud, thud on every door. But the girls had not been involved in the strange scene, except as spectators. They were both thoroughly disturbed. Their hearts beat quickly when Claire whispered, "Let's get out of here." Her voice sounded husky and unnatural, as if her throat was dry. They slid rather than ran down the steep stairs, clinging tightly to the banister, and when they were both safely on the landing, they burst through the nearest door. To Maria, it was literally any door she had not sorted out the various rooms on that floor, and to Claire it meant only that it was the nearest. It turned out to be Lance's room. He woke at the click of the old-fashioned latch and switched on his bedside lamp, apparently wide awake in an instant. "What on earth are you two doing in the middle of the night?" he inquired calmly. "Have you seen a ghost?" "Oh, Lance," said Claire, thankfully. "That's just what we've seen. Several ghosts." "Both of you?" "Yes, both of us, together. Two people have seen a ghost." "It deserves investigation. Serious investigation. If the ghosts were plural, it's even more serious. But we may as well investigate in comfort." He turned on the electric fire and indicated that they were both to sit on the sofa, and he took his eiderdown off his bed and tucked it cosily over their knees. The warmth and comfort and Lance's normal matter-of-fact tone worked wonders. Someone was taking them seriously, neither panicking nor doubting, just listening and believing. "Now, tell me everything, every single thing." Lance ran his fingers through the mop of his hair and sat down opposite, his elbows on his knees and chin on his clasped hands. "We smelt a funny smell," said Maria. "Both of us." "It was incense," corrected Claire, "though I did not recognize it at first, but it was incense, I'm sure. We woke up, or rather I woke up, and nudged Maria. She woke at once. We found the room wasn't dark, and at the far end a service was going on." "It was a mass," said Maria. "They had a priest in white robes and table made into an altar and a silver cross hanging above, and they rang a little bell," put in Claire, "and chanted. It was so secret and solemn," went on Maria. "It was beautiful and peaceful till the hammering on the door began, several people hammering with their fists and shouting. It didn't seem to be on our ordinary door either, not at the one we always used near our beds. It sounded as if it were at the far end of the room," said Claire. "What did you think, Maria?" "Yes, it wasn't close enough to be our door. You're right, the voices shouting the warnings were far away too. A loud voice said, 'We are betrayed. The Queen's men are here.' Yes. No, not here, corrected Claire. At hand. The Queen's men are at hand. And then there was more knocking. Yes, you're right. I remember now. Lance listened to every word, and when there was a pause, he spoke. Queen Elizabeth I was a Protestant and passed a law forbidding the saying of Mass, but many Catholic families made elaborate arrangements to worship in secret. There were Catholic carpenters who, under cover of doing some alterations to the house, devised secret hiding places where a priest could be concealed. They were called priest holes. Then, usually at night, the priest ventured out to say the forbidden Mass, and often neighbours and friends stole through the dark countryside to join them. Attics were sometimes changed into temporary chapels. Where did they put the priest holes? Asked Claire. Oh, in secret cupboards and behind panelling, and often in the chimney. Wasn't it too hot for the poor priest? Inquired Maria. I don't think he lived in the chimney. It was a good hiding place if the Queen's men were on a prowl, searching out priests and disobedient Catholics. A man called Trevor Phillips, cunning as a fox, led the searches. He could decipher codes, and his spies were everywhere, measuring buildings and tapping walls to find secret rooms. What happened when the priests and the Catholics were caught? The priests were often put to death, and the Catholics heavily fined. They might be put to death as well. Was my bedroom cupboard a priest hole? Asked Claire, her eyes never leaving Lance's face. Might easily have been. They were often built in gables. Might even have had an inner room to deceive the searchers. They wouldn't suspect another secret place if they found the first one. Shall we investigate inside my cupboard and see what we find? Let's start now. Claire jumped up eagerly. Are you both agreed over what you've told me? Did either of you see or hear anything the other didn't? They shook their heads. Oh no, Lance, we were together, so of course we saw the same thing and heard the same thing, and we were wide awake, well, as we are now. Then what happened? Said Lance, encouragingly. Then they swept everything away like lightning, said Claire. Or I suppose that's what they did. They blew out the candle first of all, so we couldn't watch what they were doing. They were so quick that they must have had lots of practice. They must have rehearsed it. I do hope they weren't caught, said Maria. They weren't doing any harm. There were some children at the service, and Father Simon was like a real father, caring for his family. Who was Father Simon? Asked Lance, quick as a flash. You haven't told me about him. Claire first, then Maria afterwards, related their earlier meetings with Tabitha, carrying Father Simon's supper. You hadn't mentioned Tabitha to Maria before she saw her herself? Asked Lance, addressing Claire. No, I told you I hadn't, said Claire impatiently. I was longing to tell her, but we hadn't been alone together for a minute, and she was much braver than me. She spoke to Tabitha and found out her name and actually asked her what she was doing. I was a bit puzzled, but she seemed so real and ordinary, explained Maria. Except for her old-fashioned clothes, I wasn't frightened. It was when she and her supper tray walked right through the cupboard door that I was scared. Then I knew she was someone different. A ghost, in fact. You're lucky girls to see a ghost. Lots of ghosts. I wish I had the chance, said Lance. Now, would you like to finish the night in my bed and I'll go up to the attic, or are you all right? The girls looked at each other, but neither wanted to be the first to admit she felt uneasy. Anyhow, there were two of them. I'll go back to my own bed, Lance. Thank you, said Claire. And so will I, added Maria. Okay, said Lance cheerfully. You can leave your bedside lamp on, for company, if you like, and I'll leave my door open. But I don't think you'll see or hear anything else tonight. If you do, just call, and I'll be up the stairs in a jiffy. Though the girls were sure they would lie awake all night, it was only a few minutes before sleep overcame them. They heard nothing more till morning, not even Lance's bare feet as he padded upstairs to make sure they'd dropped off. He himself pondered between fitful dozes. Though Lance and the girls had made no arrangements to keep the night's events to themselves, they did not mention them to the rest of the family. Lance had been more impressed than he had shown by Claire's determination to keep Tabitha's second appearance from her parents, once she had experienced their sympathetic disbelief and had realised that the possession of her bedroom was at stake, the bedroom she prized so highly. He was also impressed by Maria's attitude. She got her head screwed on the right way, and he thought to himself, only children aren't all soft and silly. She's a cool customer for a start. During the day, while the younger boys were out on their bicycles and Charles had disappeared with his binoculars, Lance invited the girls to come to his room, which was warm and comfortable, though small. The table was covered with books and papers, as he often studied up there. I'll tell you a few facts I've collected about the time when this house was built. You'll see why if you listen. They fixed their eyes on him unwaveringly, and he did not fidget or interrupt. An idea crossed his mind that he wouldn't mind teaching children one day if they listened like these two, absorbing every syllable. Yes, we might take some measurements later on. I don't think Dad would stand for any more walls being pulled down. The alterations have cost too much already, but he couldn't object to peaceful measuring and checking. By some mysterious process, never perfectly understood, the other boys were soon caught up in the possibility of there being a priest hole actually in the house, just waiting to be discovered. The children swarmed all over the building with rulers and tape measures, measuring every nook and cranny, and tapping the woodwork like demented woodpeckers, listening for a hollow sound. As they soon found out, many wooden surfaces gave back a hollow note, if tapped often enough with sufficient force, but Lance's respect for the fabric of the house kept them from using tools which could do damage. Stick to accurate measuring, he advised. Be scientific. Write it all down. When we get a watertight case for the existence of a priest hole, that's the time for the next step. Let's be sure of our facts first. A black notebook was produced with priest holes written on the cover, and all measurements, scientific or otherwise, were inscribed inside in Lance's spidery writing. Whatever the children were doing, he's keeping them quiet and out of the way, said Mr. Cope with satisfaction. It's all Lance, said his wife. I never thought he took much notice of the younger ones, but I was wrong. Claire and Maria never willingly leave him alone. I heard he had to lock his door the other day to get some of his own work done. He started the notion of a priest hole, and now it's everybody's idea. They're all dead keen on finding one. They talk learnedly about secret masses and codes and hiding places, went on Mr. Cope. Just look at that. He opened the window and stuck his head out. Don't lean out so far, Jimmy, he shouted as he looked upward. I'm all right, Daddy. Charles has got hold of my feet. I really believe I may be onto something. A steel measure waved wildly from a landing window. I've dropped it again. You go and fetch it, Charles. I can see it shining in that laurel bush. Fetch it yourself. You let go of it, but I fetched your biro last time you dropped it. That's fair. Mr. Cope withdrew his head and slammed the sitting room window shut. They'd listened to a conversation taking place in another part of the house. Mr. and Mrs. Cope would have been surprised. If only we knew that they weren't caught that night, and that Father Simon wasn't killed, said Maria. But we never shall. I asked Lance if there would be anyone on guard, and he said yes, of course. There must always be a lookout. They might have given the warning in time. The sound of distant hoofs, a dog barking, and an unexpected light, a little, would have been enough to put them on alert. After all, their lives were at stake. There was a pause. Then Claire spoke. We shan't see anything again. I know we shan't. It's happened. It won't happen again, ever. I keep wondering why you and I were given that ghostly glimpse of the past. We were so ignorant, so unsuitable. Now, I don't agree with you, contradicted Maria. In one way, we were very well chosen. Apart from being actually on the spot, I think ghosts are often lonely. Tabitha must have felt very drawn to you, as a girl, like herself, to allow herself to be seen at all. I was too surprised, as it happened, to be really scared, so I was able to speak to her, and she replied, quietly and naturally. It may have been many years since a living person spoke to her. Poor girl. I've heard that ghosts only show themselves to people who believe in them. I'm thankful I was frightened silently, said Claire, who couldn't forgive herself for being frightened at all. You always hear of people screaming and screeching when they see a ghost. Tabitha may not have known that I was petrified. She went on more cheerfully. I didn't utter a word. I do so hope she didn't know or guess. The two girls acquired a good knowledge of priests and priest holes. They read books, and by Lance, and Maria read many more when she got home, helped by a friendly librarian. But she kept discussion of their strange experiences for times in the holidays when she and Claire were together, and never mentioned it to other friends or even her parents. Over the years, Tabitha became an intimate and friendly figure in their memories, like someone met on a journey and never forgotten. Through the door. by Ruth Ainsworth. Read by me, Gav Cross, from Haunting Ghost Stories. With colour illustrations. Sadly, no illustrations that I've yet found for that particular story. What did you think? Let me know. Leave a comment. Click the like. Maybe subscribe. Remember, you can join in live on Substack. You can grab the audios on Spotify. Or there's loads and loads of supernatural stories. Perhaps not all as famous 5e as that one on my YouTube channel. The links are below. But I'm always interested in what you think. Tabitha, the friendly ghost. That was from Jersey. She's here live, like I am, live in the past. Maybe by now, I'm a ghost. See you next week.